So now we are live. Good morning, India. Today I have a wonderful, I will call him kid, but he's a grown up boy right now. We're going to talk to him about coding, and I will ask a few questions from him. And I'm doing this program to honor Sushant Singh Rajput, that he advised the Indian kids and the Indian future and the Bharat future to learn coding. So, hi Ali, do you want to be called by any nickname or you want to be called by your Ali name?
Ollie is fine.
Okay. Ali, it's nice to have you here.
Yep, nice to be here.
So, tell us a little bit about how young were you when you started coding?
Yeah, so I'm a full stack back end and front end developer. I work with graphical programming, reverse engineering, and similar technologies, along with cryptography and network programming. I started programming when I was around the age of 8 to 10.
Okay. So, is it the usual normal age to start coding? Like every kid uh, start coding? Is it a very young age?
No, actually, there are definitely that majority of people who begin their education or profession in computer science when they're out of high school and they're deciding on which educational path to take or which degree to pursue for their future career. It's definitely not a unusual thing. There's a lot of kids out there who are interested in this sort of stuff, and uh, usually, but in general, it's mostly a lot of adults that dominate the field.
Okay, so what coding does? Does it develop some artificial intelligence or it helps you in getting on moon, landing on moon, or
Uh,
it's just anything else?
yeah, so in modern evolution, or not modern evolution, in modern computing, everything runs on these chip devices, and these chips have processors on them, and these processors do instructions. And what the programmer's job is a computer can only do what it's told to do. So you write the routines, you write the instructions, you write what the computer needs to do, you write what the computer needs to show in order to create a user experience where the touch of a button masks hundreds of actions behind it. The field of computational research or programming or something similar, it's taken from many fields. For example, electrical engineering for the hardware side, and mathematical or very mathematical based engineering for the hardware side as well, electrical signals with binary math. And the field of computer or research or software development branches out into so many different fields. For example, game development, uh, artificial intelligence, uh, and then, like you mentioned, space exploration, in which these devices or these probes that are sent out into space are controlled by these chips, which navigate and figure out where they are in space and like map themselves and route themselves and properly align themselves in like the correct yaw pitch to move towards their destination.
Okay, thank you. So, does it have any role in the field of medicine? Like, will it be doing anything in the future with genetic modification of human being as well as we see in this, American Heroes movie where they genetically modified people and give them, like powers and energy?
It's definitely a possibility. I wouldn't say tech computer science has definitely infiltrated the field of medical research. It's used a lot, storing research, things like patient databases, stuff like that. And when it comes down to genetics, there definitely is theory that you can read or parse genetic code by computers, and I think this is being done by some of those DNA testing labs, like 23andMe, and like these facilities that you can like send some of your DNA to, and they'll break down your ancestry. Um, it definitely has some relevancy, and it could be interesting to see what it expands into because currently it's at a very young stage where there's not much technological advancement, and mainly anything in the medical field is just hands-on doctor work and with scientists and all those people working closely together.
Mhm. So in coding, what basically it does is like developing softwares, like making this Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, even right now what we're doing, StreamYarding and Zoom. Are they all, the program which is built on the coding or built around coding?
Yeah, so everything that runs on a computer is code. No matter every action, every tap, every click, every signal was created by someone. They had to write a routine to interact with whatever you're interacting with. And Facebook is an example of a developer who created a web interface, created a place where people can post things, created a simple interface where people could create accounts, log in, and post about various things. Everything that runs on a computer was written by someone. And there are different companies that, write these for purposes of financial gain. Almost everything is about financial gain in the computational world, and things like advertisement tracking, that's all written by someone. And the things that make it seem the things that seem simple, like transmitting audio, is really a super complex process of converting vibrations in the air, for example, into an electrical signal, encoding them, sending them over thousands of miles of cabling electrically, routing through ISPs, ending up at your home, and then taking those electrical signals and turning them back into vibrations in the air. That's, for example, the complexity of these devices. But whenever the front end user sees them, it's a simple operation. And that's what the job of the developer kind of is.
Okay, so if I may ask a question, when the first computer was built by Alan Turing or the the Enigma, which was German machines, or let me put it that way. For example, when we discovered telephone calling, was telephone um, did that involve some sort of developing codes, or that's different than the coding in computer?
They are 100% related. Um, Telephones, for example, telephones back in the day use a similar technology to internet. And the telephone line transmits audio data represented as electrical signals. And the only primary difference is the development of embedded programming or embedded computation, or however you may want to call it, where we have the ability to take this software and place it in the computer and have it be inside your computer, while back in the day they would feed computer instructions with punch cards, and then the computer would read the punch card and work or do operations based on these punch cards that they fed. And now we have advanced the ability to store those instructions that were originally on punch cards into hard drives or solid state. And on top of that, we've built languages where we've split the development or split the field of computer science into so many different things like web development, back-end development, game development. The creation of languages helps split up all these fields into specializations, really. Like in the medical field, for example, you have your specialists. It's kind of the same in the computer science field, where you have your website developers and then you have your backend developers.
Okay, if I have asked another similar question, like when we had a typing machine,
Mm-hmm.
typing, the old typing, I hope you see one, maybe in Goodwill or in pictures. So when I was growing up in my college, I would see like a typist would be sitting and typing my application. So now when we see the keyboard of a computer, the way the alphabets and numbers are on the keyboard, it's
Mm-hmm.
with the same order on the typing machine. So do you think that computer and a simple typing machine, like one is an advanced coding and another is a simple coding, or they're two different entities?
Advanced coding and simple coding. Well, first, going to the thing about typewriters, the primary difference is that typewriters are based on mechanical switches and levers, while keyboards are based on switches and electrical signals. Oh, and I have a question. I got a question. Well, my parents are from Afghanistan, but I'm born in the USA. So, as you mentioned, the keyboard layout, we call that generally the accepted norm is QWERTY, QWERTY, as you can see on the top, like 5 keys first on the top row. Now, this was initially invented to prevent the typewriters from jamming, and since it was the public accepted norm, it was just standardized into keyboards. But there is definitely a line between advanced and simple coding, and uh, to put it into a simple term, there could be possibly a game developer or a subroutine developer where they make uh, the main menu for a game, let's say, or the interface. While then you have the AI developer who develops the NPC interaction or something like that for the game. Or we could switch to a more complicated subject like machine learning, for example. In machine learning, you have the guy who writes the routines for the machine learning, or and then you have the person who consumes that resource. You have someone who built the system for machine learning, like Siri, for example. And then you have the app developers that integrate with Siri, where the creator for Spotify, for example, made a function where if you ask Siri to play something on Spotify, it will do that. And Apple created the vocal recognition while Spotify integrated with Siri. So there's definitely a line between the front and back side of development. And and then coming to advanced and simple coding, um, advanced is a advanced could mean very many things, and it really depends on what field you're talking about or which like subcategory of computer science you're talking about. And I was a free I am not really looking for a project right now. I'm kind of focusing on open source development or building portfolios, but I could be interested in anything. So yeah.
Yes, Ali, and my other question for you is, when I was growing up, we had a really simple calculators, that we add, subtract, and maybe a little bit of logarithmic questions, or, square roots and under the roots, this kind of simple calculation we would use calculator for. So what do you think? Was that the primitive like technology coding or artificial intelligence, or that was just simple few buttons? You hit one and then plus sign, like
Um,
you hit 10 plus
I
billions and equal this much amount.
now calculators and devices like these go into a separate category called usually referred to as like embedded systems, which you create devices on chips standard um, and standard just a sec. I'll answer that question later. You create standard protocols for communication and you create your own chips and systems. And these devices, while they may seem primitive and they may seem old, it was pinnacle of technological advancements. These devices were absolutely revolutionary. They created, and especially what's known as the ARM processor. So the ARM processor is known to take up a very low amount of wattage and produce a very little amount of heat, but still be pretty fast in computational power compared to modern desktop processors. And usually these calculators and stuff utilize this sort of technology. And really, the calculators, while they may seem primitive, and they certainly kind of are, they are still complex devices that have complex instructions and complex subroutines that were written by somebody at one point. And I'd say it is definitely harder to write software on these embedded systems. It's way easier to create a web application on a desktop where you have these services provided for you and you can install stuff rather than on bare bone metal. And it really takes a skilled developer to create something like that that's really efficient. Um, so even though they may seem like primitive technology, it certainly is something that was very innovative in the field. And those calculators and simple devices led to the modern iPhones today, really, with embedded system on chips.
Thank you, Ali. And also, one other question: is math directly related to being the expert of computer, artificial intelligence, and coding? So, do you have to know math to be a better coding, or is two different entities?
To answer this question, you really need to think about what field you're trying to go into. Like I said, there are specialists, and you really got to think about what you're trying to do. For example, in game development, you're going to need to know a lot of math, a lot of problem solving, and programmatically thinking about things and thinking about the fastest way to do something. You're going to need to know trigonometry. You're going to need to know about angles. You're going to need to know how to set up Euler angles and like viewports. And you're going to need to know matrix math and stuff like this. All this is related to the field of game development. But if we're talking about standard development, I would say a basic understanding of math is necessary. If we're talking about easy development, something for a project, the development you're going to be going through or the math you're going to be using is very simple, like algebra 1, I'd say. But it does get complex in a lot of scenarios, and the mathematics is very tightly roped or tied together with computer science, but they're not necessarily correlated in the way that a professional mathematician will be a professional computer scientist.
So, okay, that was all nice, very nice of you to be telling us all this. And Ali will be joining us every week for 30 minutes to tell us about coding. And if you guys want to know about coding, I just want to mention Ali is just a little boy. His vision and his knowledge is for both the college student graduates and also school student, because Ali himself is in school. And we will be talking more to him on Ali. And if you guys want to leave any message, this video will be here. Kindly share this video with your kids and with your friends and families, so we can also encourage the future of Bharat to know the technology, to be an aware generation, and so they can build a prosperous future. And if we can start laying the foundation of advanced first world develop and prosperous future for our children, so it's the time. Kindly bring your friends and encourage Ali, ask him questions. Ali, I have two questions for you. um, the question is on the screen. If you answer this question.
Yeah. This is actually a pretty good question. It is absolutely not necessary. I personally was interested in this sort of development, and I was interested in the game development field at that age. And then that led to me learning professional development within 6, 5 years, 6, 7 years actually. But there are plenty of great developers that come out of that come out of college or come out of even high school too. But if you're coming straight out of high school, you're going to need to have some experience. Certainly, what helps is having a college degree and finding employment, but it is not necessary to start at an early age, and really, it's a simple field where it's simple to start learning, and you can start at any age. You can start at any education level, really. Perhaps not too low, but like as long as you have a solid grasp of algebra, um, I really think anybody could get into the field of computer science, um, whether or not you're a college student, because there are plenty of people who didn't go to college and get into computer science, and there are also plenty of students who just got out of college and never were interested in computer science before, but left with like a bachelor's in computer science and now are employed at like Microsoft or one of the top 5 companies.
So there is one more question. I don't know if it's relevant. You want to answer or not? It's up to you.
I'm not too educated on this topic. I am pretty certain that the U.S. military does do developmental work on things like, tracking technology, radar technology, satellite technology. So it's definitely most likely probable that they have some sort of, you know, technology or team working on something like this.
Okay. And one last question, Ali. Um, this TikTok app, which was like quite, we all were scared that we are being monitored, and all other Snapchats, which we give where we are located right now. Like even when my phone is on, my computer is on, and my videos is on. Am I being watched?
Um, Certainly, actually. You're not necessarily being watched by one person, but your data is being tracked. Now, this is honestly seen differently by many people. Some people think it's a good thing, having your info out on the internet. Something happens to you, you can be searched for. But something like TikTok, uh, they track. They usually use something called an advertisement ID, where they associate you with an ID, and then they have all sorts of information about you, like search habits, etc. And this is to bring up, relevant ads. And your data in the modern age is pretty much gold. Your data is incredibly valuable, and you want to protect it to an extent. And an app like TikTok, this is a very controversial topic. And the reason it's controversial is because it includes the Chinese government, which is unknown to be, what information they can actually be pulling or are able to receive from the developers of TikTok. Um, so yeah, there's definitely an extent to what you want to do or how you want to protect your data. But everybody honestly has different opinions on being tracked or, having their data be online or something similar. And a great point to bring up is that we live in a internet of almost everything being absolutely free, and there is a price to pay for all these services being free, and that's of course your data being tracked. And as long as we're in this state of, well, I think of where services like Twitter and Google exist, where anybody can upload anything, and for free, and create a new account out of the whim, that certainly has a price to pay, even though the service is actually free itself.
Thank you so much, Ali, for joining us today. Do you have any message for viewers or?
I mean, to any viewer who is interested in the computer science field, I'd say first you're going to need to find out what you're interested in, figure out what exactly you want to do in computer science and why you want to do it, and then work towards that specific goal. Learning computer science is a very difficult task, especially if you don't have a direction of, a direction where you want to progress. Usually in like a college environment, or if you're learning online, you're going to be met with a empty path, or like useless projects that you're going to be working on, like apps that, can deal a card from a deck or something similar. They're good projects to train yourself into remembering and learning more about the language you're working on, for example. But you really want to find something you're motivated to work on, and find it actually being fun to work on, instead of something mind numbing off something like a YouTube tutorial. Well, they do work pretty well too. And the YouTube tutorials do work well to teach you about the language and stuff like that. But you really need to find something that motivates you to get into this business.
Um, Thank you, Ali, for joining us, and we will be definitely expecting you next week when more people will find out that you are coming on this time and date. They will be coming and they will be bringing their kids, and there will be more question for you, and it will kind of be a nice, um, just I was a question. Yes, so this is a dream of one of our deceased brother, Sushant Singh Rajput. And now Ali is a kid who's very much into coding, and he knows about things that we all want to know, our kids want to know. I definitely didn't grow up in Ali's generation. My generation was still behind technologies. So the coming generation and Ali generation is for the technology. Ali, just so good to have you here, and we will be expecting you next week with us.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You have a good night.
You
Bye.
too.